Hi y'all, welcome to Chapter 2, HCM1143. Hey, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Chapter 2. It is all about measurements and how healthcare is measured. Can't be measured in the number of people who live, because frankly, everybody's going to die sometime, and so that can't be an accurate measurement of how good healthcare is. And so this whole chapter is all about how to measure healthcare and the different ways that's done. One thing that I would like to call your attention to is the concept of holistic medicine. You'll hear that a lot, and a lot of people believe that that would mean treating the entire body, not just the part that is affected by the illness. But what holistic medicine really refers to is treating the mind, body, and spirit. You will find these are the people who will work on mental health as well as physical health. There will be spiritual aspects to it. This is a lot of people will practice with prayer, with meditation, with even some counseling in order to heal a disease that's in the body. Now, mostly diseases in the body can be broken down to two basic categories, either acute or chronic. One is not better than the other. Acute illness is one that is symptoms are onset and they are immediate. So if you had an acute condition, that might be something like appendicitis, where the inflammation of the appendix has gotten to a point where it has caused an illness, and it's an emergency situation. Usually an acute illness will land you in the emergency room. A chronic illness is something that does not necessarily have a one treatment fix. This is something that people manage rather than cure. So high blood pressure, diabetes, congestive heart failure, all these are chronic illnesses. Doesn't mean that they're any less serious. As a matter of fact, they can many times be more serious and more damaging than an acute illness, but their symptoms are broad and they are not going to be a one pill fix and the problem go away. So a couple of things I like to draw your attention to. One of them is called an iatrogenic illness. You're going to love these as a healthcare administrator. An iatrogenic illness is one that has been caused by healthcare. So a lot of times what you'll see is an iatrogenic illness will be something like a MRSA infection or SARS, something that you came in for one problem, and while it was being fixed, being in the environment of the hospital or the clinic or dirty instrument or whatever has given you a whole different problem. And that is very serious. Iatrogenic illnesses are usually, they'll wind you up with litigation. So that's why you want to make sure all your policies and your regulations are followed to try to give yourself at least a measure of protection. When people say you caused this illness, at least you can show that you did everything you could to keep from causing an illness like that. Okay, when you are talking about people's health, it is not necessarily one determining factor of people's health, but at least four. And this is in your book. But when you talk about health, you have to take into account a person's lifestyle. If a person is obese, they are already predetermined to have certain illnesses, living proof, that come along with that. And it can be mitigated by their lifestyle. If they were not obese, these problems probably would not be in play. Another determining factor is the environment that they live in. Could be they live in a very polluted area, and so they have respiratory issues. It could be that they have a very risky job, and so they have stress fractures and inflammation of joints and things like that caused by what they do on a day-to-day basis. There's always heredity. There are many things that are passed down in our DNA that have a start date on them in your body. You're a ticking time bomb that at some point this is going to start to affect you because you were born with it. And finally, how much medical care is prevalent in your life. So when you first get a sniffle, are you going to the doctor? Or are you waiting until that is a full-blown, serious illness before you are seeking? Are you finding a lump but letting it grow until you can see it through your clothing instead of checking it out as soon as you notice it? Those kinds of things are in the medical care, and those are a great deal of the determinants to how healthy you actually are. Okay, so when you're trying to talk about actually how healthy you are, how do you know? What is the determining factors of how healthy you are? So we've broken it down into 4 measurements. One is longevity. How old are you? How long have you lived? 2 is morbidity. Now pay attention, because 2 of these words sound very close together. When you talk about something morbid, it's usually sad or whatever. Morbidity in healthcare deals with the level of illness that you are dealing with. And there are 2 ways that illness is measured if you were talking about the incidence or the prevalence. Like, for instance, the health department will track the incidence and the prevalence of HIV. Incidence is how many new cases are happening within a certain time period. How many cases happened this year or over the last 5 years. Okay. Prevalence is not new cases, it's all cases. So you can say a disease is prevalent if a certain amount of the population has it, and it doesn't matter when they were diagnosed with it. It's the whole population that is affected by that disease at any given time period. Another way of measuring your health is your amount of disability. Obviously, disability is the opposite of ability. So what you need someone else to do for you is a measurement of how much disability you have. So when you're talking in healthcare, the typical measurement for how much disability you have is how many of your activities of daily living, or ADLs, as you will hear a lot in long-term care, do you need assistance with? Do you need assistance with bathing, with dressing, with eating, with toileting? All of those are activities of your daily life. Everybody gets out of bed in the morning, they put on clothes, they go to the bathroom, and they get something to eat at some point in the day. Those are your personal activities of daily living, and when those are impaired, that would be the level of disability that you have. And finally is mortality. Mortality and morbidity get mixed up from time to time. Mortality is how many people are dying within a particular period of time. Okay, I've talked a lot about they and how you can't tell they to do anything. But the concept, the reason why people want they to do something is a concept of social justice. And when we talk about the Affordable Care Act, which was our last major healthcare reform in this country, you have to know that there was an aspect of social justice to that. It was the outcry that people are not receiving the health care they need, and that is why something should be done. One of the components of the ACA was to eliminate pre-existing conditions from eliminating you from health insurance. And so that was a huge boost to people who had been trying to access health care, and that was another access problem that they were having. And finally, a lot of your discussion and your quiz comes from the Healthy People Initiative. So I need you to really concentrate on that. I'm not going to go through that because there's a whole lot to read and absorb, but I do want to call your attention to making sure that you look at that. Okay, we'll see you soon. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 2. See you for Chapter 3.